Yo, 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 welcome back to the Out of the Box Show. I'm John Wallace alongside my co-host Chris Calderera. Yep, that's right. I said it. Chris Calderera is pinch hitting for James and Rory this week. Couldn't be more stoked to have him. I was talking to him before the show, and he mentioned that he watched pretty much almost every second of LSU baseball for the past weekend and our midweek game. Chris, we're excited to have you. Are you ready to talk some baseball?
Yeah, no, I'm actually, thankful to be on the show, and I'm actually glad to put this lack of a life I have to use. So, little did I know that watching every single pitch of baseball this weekend would come into use. So I'm glad to be able to provide that service to this podcast.
Well, you talk about a lack of life, but that's why we started a podcast, so we could just sit here and hear ourselves talk. But we have a packed show for you guys. Going to break down LSU baseball. Tigers are 7-1 on the year. They went to the Round Rock Classic, did pretty well over there, won it, and then won the midweek game against Texas in exciting fashion. We're going to break it all down, get to a little miscellaneous LSU coaching football news. But other than that, going to be a pretty short show, lightning round. Chris came prepared, so there's not going to be a bunch of ums and a bunch of pauses and a bunch of looking up stats. Chris has all the stats right up here in his noggin. So we're ready to rock and roll. But before we do all that, I want to give a huge shout out to the Boot Crew Media Network. Boot Crew Media is killing it this time of year. March Madness. Today is the first day of March, Chris. Your bracketology season starts now. Yours has probably been going on for a while. Getting your research for, since October and
I'm already busted, man. My bracket's busted.
Already busted. March, I'm done. Before you even put it together.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, honestly, since LSU basketball is not going to make even the NIT tournament, I'm thinking I'm going to go more all in on the women's bracket, and I'm very likely going to put LSU women winning it all, because I got a lot of faith in Kim Mulkey and the team. They're doing fantastic this year. But all that to say, Boot Crew Media Network is where it's at. BootCrewMedia.com, and on social media at Boot Crew Media. The content is endless. The NFL draft's coming up. Saints offseason is kind of crazy right now, given the Derek Carr news and the draft coming up. And if anyone has not been living under a rock, then you've seen that we have been posting a ton of mock drafts on Twitter, gotten a lot of feedback, most of it negative. But all that to say, one thing's for certain, we want the Saints to have a good draft class. So, BootCrewMedia.com, and on social media at Boot Crew Media. Also, speaking of Boot Crew Media, just got some new ad reads from DraftKings for the first of the month. DraftKings is the official sports betting partner of Boot Crew Media. Are you ready for the underdogs, the upsets, and the unbelievable action from DraftKings Sportsbook? The biggest tournament in college basketball is here. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 on college hoops and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, for a limited time, all customers can score a no-sweat bet during round 1 and 2 of the tournament. Go to the app, opt in, and place a no-sweat bet this weekend. If it doesn't hit, you'll get a bonus bet back. I might be a little early on this ad read, but this is for the tournament. This is for the week of the 12th. You'll get a bonus bet back up to $10. Please talk about any tournament matchups with your friends and get your bonus bets in. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code BOOT to sign up. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Win or lose, only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code BOOT. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. So that ad read is, we got it a little bit early, but it is previewing the upcoming NCAA tournament. So get ready for that. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today. See show notes for details. All right, Chris. Sorry, that was
no, man. It's never too early to make money. So
just
the worm.
Well, after football season, I'm definitely going to need to get back in the arena to win back my losses from this past season. But overall, as a podcast, we did pretty good. Plus, we made the rules, so we got to kind of dictate our record for that. But anyway, the whole reason we do this podcast, LSU baseball, travel to the Round Rock Classic. Series started on Friday at 2 p.m. As Luffy and I said last week, it was a revenge game against Kansas State for our bowl loss a couple years ago when John Trey Kirkland was our quarterback. The football team was an absolute shambles, but this is baseball. LSU went Friday, 2 p.m. I'm kind of a fan of the Friday 2 p.m. game. I get off at noon on Fridays, and, it's nice to kind of ease into your weekend, take a little nap while you're watching a little baseball. And all that to say, LSU dominated 10-4. Paul Skeens went 6 innings pitched. We got to see a little Trey Morgan in left. Tommy White returns. Chris, what are your big takeaways from Friday's matchup against Kansas State?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway here is Paul Skeens. I mean, for another start, his second straight start in the purple and gold, he threw 11 Ks. Just dominant work from him. You could also say Ty Floyd was a big takeaway too. Ty Floyd came in relief and threw up 5 Ks. So all in all, I think that Tiger fans were relieved to see Skeens once again duplicate the performance he had on opening night for LSU, and to know that a guy like Ty Floyd can come in and pick up right where Skeens or some of these other stars are going to leave off. So obviously, the offense. We'll be talking about the offense a lot, I'm sure, in these next few games. A little sluggish after Brady Neal's RBI single in the second. There were some goose egg innings that were thrown up right after that. But all in all, it came together. And like you said, the Tigers ended up winning big against a Kansas State team who's, that was probably the worst team out of all the teams at the Round Rock Classic. But it's good to beat teams like that convincingly. That was the job when we came in to play Kansas State, beat the team convincingly, and we did just that. So I think when it comes to Kansas State, I think LSU just took care of business.
Yeah, I mean, we're the number 1 team in the country. Kansas State clearly wasn't up to par, like you said. Skeens, I believe he threw 101 pitches. That really is promising to see a guy going that late into innings, doing what he has to do. Jay Johnson is not leaving anything on the table. He is what I've noticed what Jay Johnson's doing, and we'll get into it kind of as we move through the weekend. But what Jay Johnson's doing is feeling this team out, unlike any other team. Maneri would tinker. Jay Johnson's just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what will come back. I mean, he actually has the guts to put Trey Morgan in left, which obviously he's a great athlete. He can definitely handle it. He's experimenting in ways that we haven't seen. One of the things that, and we're also going to get to, is the way that this team is, the way he's scheduling, right? So he is scheduling tough road games like tournaments, 4-game series early on in the season, midweek games against tough opponents early on, so he can know what he's got early on in the season. So that way, when it comes down to the final stretch of the season, he is 100% decided and ready to go. One guy goes down, he knows exactly who to put in, which he's already had to do that this year. Tommy White going down in the first inning of the first game of the year. I mean, he's just – I love his I think I'm going to call it aggressive experimenting, because he is aggressively trying to figure out what he has in this team. The whole point and the whole talk before the season was how much talent this team has. He's putting it all to the test early on, and I love it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you bring up a couple of good points there. One, and this was something I wanted to mention at some point in this podcast, but since you brought it up, I think a lot of people take for granted how difficult it is for a team to be on the road for an entire week. I mean, LSU was living out of their suitcases since last Wednesday, Thursday, when they went to the Round Rock Classic. And then obviously they finished up last night against Texas. That's tough to do, and it's especially tough to do at the beginning of a season when guys are still trying to establish routines. So the fact that Johnson's already willing to take this team out of their comfort zone and force them to grow in this way, like you said, aggressively experiment. Trey Morgan in the outfield, that was something that obviously we had spoken about in the offseason. It had kind of been hinted that was there's a chance we could see that. But I don't think we expected to see it this early and maybe this often. Obviously the Tommy White injury probably plays a big factor in why we're seeing it so much. But, I think I remember when I was learning how to swim, my swim instructor took me to the deep end, and she took a fork and poked me in the side to get me to jump into the water and learn how to swim. And in a way, I think that's what some of the best coaches do. They force their team, they put their team in uncomfortable situations, and it's a sink or swim situation. And obviously, this is a very talented team. I mean, everyone agrees right now that this is the number one team in the country, so we should be able to swim. But kudos to Johnson for taking advantage of the faith he has in this team and seeing what's going to work.
Chris, you're always good for a great analogy, and I think that worked out perfect. I mean a fork poke is definitely that would definitely get me to jump in the water. One other small takeaway, doesn't really matter because Morgan's already back in the lineup. Was a little scary when he slammed into the wall. I had to sit out the next day, but he's back in the lineup, and from what you could tell, Saturday and on Tuesday he's fine. Moving on to Saturday, LSU. I think this is one game that LSU would like to forget. It is early on in the season. Riley Cooper got the start, pitched 3 innings, gave up 7 hits, 5 earned runs, had 5 strikeouts, but overall kind of got lit up early. And I just think that this is kind of what Jacques Doucet, when he came on a couple weeks ago, was talking about. It's like there's going to be a crisis at some point, and luckily this isn't an extended crisis because of the way we bounced back in the 2 games following it. But it was an absolute beatdown that the number one team in the nation took by Iowa.
Yeah, some days you have it and some days you don't. And I think that's a big issue in the LSU sports fandom. There are a lot of fans who watch baseball as if they're watching football. And the two sports are just completely different. I mean, you're going to have days like LSU had against Iowa, and really nothing was going right for the Tigers. I did listen to Ben McDonald went on off the bench yesterday, I think. So the other OTB, the lesser known OTB maybe. Right. But he went on. He was talking to Hester and T-Bob, and he was saying, sometimes when you're facing a pitcher who is effectively wild, who doesn't know where the ball is going, that can be just as difficult as facing a pitcher with pinpoint accuracy. So I was throwing this kid Brecht, who's touching plus 100 miles per hour on his fastball. He has no idea where it's going. You mix in the wipeout slider that he has. I mean, you've got a recipe for a really difficult pitcher to face for the batters. Now, McDonald suggested, maybe LSU should have had an approach where they were more patient at the plate and taken more walks. But I think when you look at this game, the kid Brecht threw 8 walks to LSU. So it wasn't like we were getting completely fooled at the plate. But, I do agree that when you've got a situation where you don't really know where the ball is going because the pitcher doesn't know where it's going, that does bring up a unique scenario. And I think LSU just struggled, man. I mean, they had the bases loaded twice early on, couldn't cash in. That's a big wind out of the sails for the offense. And anytime you come up with the bases loaded and you can't scratch for 1 run, that all the momentum swings from your dugout to the other team's dugout. And then you had another situation with, Braden Jobert in the outfield, misplaying that ball. There was a ball hit right at him. He had cinder blocks for feet there. It looked like me in the 6th grade trying to field a fly ball just right over his head. That can't happen. That was a situation where Iowa blew that game open right there. So, I think that it was just a case of on a large scale, LSU just not playing its best game. And that's going to happen in baseball. But like you mentioned, John, I mean, it's what can you do? How can you flush it? How can you move forward? And we saw what happened, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. But, kudos to the Tigers for hanging in there and flushing it.
Yeah, as the great Rocky Balboa once said, that it ain't about how hard you get hit, it's about how hard or how you get back up and keep moving forward. So I can come with the quotes and the analogies too. But yeah, like you said, I mean, LSU did strike out 14 times. It is hard whenever you go down in baseball in the first inning and went down 3-0. It's so tough to come back after that. Now, if there's any team that can do it, as LSU showed against Southern, that they can hang with the best of them even when they go down early. I'm just saying it's like that's always what it is in sports. Like the first inning, you get punched. It makes it that much harder for the rest of the game. A couple other notes that I had. they did kind of switch up, as you mentioned, the outfield with Pearson in left and Joe Barry in right. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's like he's seeing who he can trust on both sides of the ball. He's seeing who he can trust at the plate the most, while not trading the defensive. He's seeing who he can trust to make the routine plays in the outfield. And another thing I like, which we keep saying we're going to get to this, but I like Gavin Dugas at second base, but I'm gonna hold on to that for a second. Another note: Cruz still had 2 hits in a game where we only had 4 hits. So he's a bright spot. Perhaps his best game was the Sunday game. Another note: we got to see Dutton, Helmers, and Bucknam come in. Helmers pitched all right. Did give up 4 runs, 4 earned, but I feel like he was kind of left in too long and left out to die there. So overall, this was, you got to flush it, and that's exactly what LSU did. Our boy Beloso got into pinch hit, so did Travinsky. So it's good to see friends of the show getting in. And then we move on to Sunday 4 p.m. LSU, which I kind of am a fan of the Sunday 4 p.m. I know some people on Sundays like to wake up from their hangover, get them some breakfast, go back to sleep for a little while, wake up by 1 or 2. At least that's what I do. But the 4 p.m. game was pretty good for LSU. Definitely their most impressive of the year with 23 hits, final score of 16-4. 23 hits. That's quite insane from any team and at any level. Chase Stores started the game, pitched 2 innings. We got to see Collins, Edwards, Herring, and Blake Money, who was our Friday night starter a year ago. Joe Barry had a big game. He had 2 home runs, 4 hits. His home runs came in back-to-back innings. Cruz was 5 for 6. And LSU scored in every inning but the 8th.
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple things about the Sam Houston game. I think that a lot of people who didn't get a chance to see the game, they may look at the final score, they may look at the box score and roll their eyes and say, okay, I mean, it was Sam Houston State. Of course, you're going to beat them 16-4. But from my understanding, now look, I'm not a Sam Houston State scout by any means, but the commentators, and I mean, these were reputable commentators. We're talking about Chris Berg, Ben McDonald, Kyle Peterson. They were all saying how good of a team Sam Houston State is. They're expecting Sam Houston State to be vying for a regional this year. So to see LSU come out and explode so much offensively, especially when the day before you were so anemic on offense, I mean, it was great to see. Obviously, Sam Houston State, they didn't help themselves out with fielding per se. But I just figured I mentioned the fact that Sam Houston State is an actually good team. And to your point, John, anytime you're scoring 16 runs on 23 hits, I mean, you're doing something right. And that's at every level. That's from T-ball to here. So one of the things, I guess, the story that we'll have to mention, since I ribbed Joe Bear on the Iowa game, I do have to mention he did homer twice in this one. So, that's kind of the story on him. That's why he's in the lineup, really. I mean, he brings a streakiness in a good way with his bat. When he gets on a tear with home runs, with huge hits, he's very good. On the flip side, when he gets cold, he tends to be very cold. Okay. And the fielding is going to be what it is. I know that Johnson has said that, the fielding has improved. I'm still kind of waiting to see that. That Iowa faux pas that he made is going to sit with me for a minute. And he also took a bad angle at a ball against Texas that I didn't love. It ended up being a double. And I think if with a better angle there, it goes from a double to an out. But, offensively, he brings a big stick. So that's a big piece of this game. LSU threw 5 pitchers. Chase Shores got the start. He looked good. Bryce Collins, Garrett Edwards, Griffin Herring, Blake Money, like you mentioned. So I think it was just all around a good game to see LSU have so much success, to try out so many pitchers, especially after that loss to Iowa.
Yeah, and to reiterate about Joe Bear, I mean, there's only 3 spots in the outfield. actually, there's only two that are even remotely
Yeah.
Dylan Cruz. I think it's fairly obvious that if the Pittsburgh Pirates aren't calling his name first in May or whenever the MLB draft is, then they got a whole bunch of other issues. But that's what Jay Johnson is weighing right now. He's weighing whether he can trust Joe Bear. He can take the good with the bad with Joe Bear. Like you said, whenever he gets hot, he's hot. Whenever he gets cold, it does seem there was a couple at bats last night in the Texas game where it seemed like he was kind of back to the cold. But Paxton Kling, his bat really hadn't come around just yet. They're projecting him to be the next Dylan Cruz. That's why it's important to not prop up players too much. But he's figuring out at what trade-offs he can trade defense for a bat or vice versa. Jay Johnson is doing that right now. So overall, 23 hits is phenomenal. And our bullpen came in, pitched well as well. So,
yeah.
So do we want to so first of all, let me ask you this. I should have asked you this before we started recording. Do you have a D1 baseball account?
I do not. I go on the website pretty frequently. I do not have an account.
Okay. All right. So do we want to go ahead and I guess complain about how the only way to watch the game was through D1baseball.com? Because I don't know if LSU fans are just more like, I guess we've been so spoiled the past few years having Lynn Rollins calling every game on the SEC Network Plus, and everything's been so accessible. And I know D1 baseball is, I mean, they're the biggest name as far as like college baseball only goes. Kendall Rogers and them do a great job. It just seems very frustrating that the only way you're able to get these games, and granted, we're early in the season. This isn't SEC play. This isn't us playing Vandy. But, I mean, I literally – I went to Pluckers on Saturday night, and I'm like, we caught the tail end of the Iowa game, and it's like, am I going to have to come back to Pluckers to be able to watch this game just because I don't have a damn 10 or 15 or whatever dollar a month subscription to D1 baseball? It's just frustrating, man. And it was even more frustrating. We'll lump them together. It was even more frustrating with the Longhorn Network last night. Shout out to – hey, I'll just go ahead and say it. Shout out Cajunomics. He saved the night for everybody. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then it's one of those things. If you know, you know. If you don't know, then I guess you don't know. Funny story. I did send the Cajunomics YouTube channel to some buddies at work, and they thought I was just messing around, sending them something stupid. So but they were still complaining about not being able to watch the game. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the lack of LSU fans' ability to watch four of the number one teams in the nation, their games. And I want to go ahead and say also, it's like there was no other option to watch the Longhorn Network unless just for whatever reason you have the everything cable package.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was just to echo what you were saying. It's frustrating because, the stream quality isn't even that great. It's not like you're paying for premier opponents and HD streaming. I mean, for most of that Carbach Classic for the Round Rock, the camera is at an askew angle. So every time there's a man on second base, he's getting completely in the way of the pitch. So you're not even really seeing the pitch hit the catcher's mitt. You have no idea if it's going to be a ball or a strike. That's really frustrating. Okay, when I'm watching a baseball game, I like to see, call me crazy, call me a maverick here. I like to see where the pitch ends up. That's just something that I've grown up accustomed to. Likewise, and I'm going to ding the Longhorn Network here because they were obsessed with this camera right behind the plate, like showing the catcher's backside. And it's like, what am I going to – like, what is this angle good for? I can't see the hit. I can't see the pitch. Why even have this as a camera angle? They would take you from there to, an angle that looked like it was on the Hubble Space Telescope. That's how far away you were from the action. I don't understand why we can't have just a camera up the middle like everybody else does. I mean, let's not try and reinvent the wheel here, guys. So that was a pet peeve of mine. And obviously, anytime you're going to limit access to watching LSU baseball games, I'm going to be against it. It's the year 2023. We've come a long way. I mean, when we were kids, John, I don't know about you. They didn't even televise the SEC tournaments. I mean, I remember listening to tournament championships on the radio. Okay. So we've come a long way with streaming. It is just unfortunate that we're still running into issues where there's this exclusivity to it when it comes to companies like D1 Baseball. So, yeah, it is frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, just like and I don't know, I didn't dig too much into it, but just offer like a weekend package or a one-time little fee. Like, you don't have to. What they're trying to do is get you hooked on the subscription to where it just auto renews and then you forget about it, right?
Yeah.
And D1 Baseball, most of their content is reading, and I only read your articles when it comes to sports. I only read your articles. That's it. The rest, I listen to podcasts and I talk. But anyway, I'm not knocking, D1 Baseball and all that. I just wish there was a way for D1 Baseball to allow like a weekend package or whatever. And I do like D1 Baseball stuff. Now the Longhorn Network, horns down for that. I mean,
Texas, that needs to end. When you come to the SEC, don't come in this league with this Longhorn Network nonsense. You leave that at the door. Okay, that's not happening.
Right. So, all right, now that we spilled our hearts out and complained enough, we're gonna go ahead and clean up the complaining before we get to LSU's midweek game. Shout out to Martine over at Workbox LLC. Luffy is not here to do the ad read, so I'm winging it. You got me. If you need a porta potty, a storage container, a luxury restroom, if you're redoing a house, you need a dumpster, you need to call Workbox at 225-343-4886. You can speak to Martine. Ask for him. He will help you out. He's always working, as Luffy says, on the golf course, at the bar, you name it, Saturday night, Monday morning, any time of day. You call Martine. He will hook it up at Workbox LLC. That's 225-343-4886. All right. Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. game on the Longhorn Network. Dude, another thing on that, last thing I'm going to say on this, I texted my dad earlier that day, and I said, hey, see if we can get the Longhorn Network. We have the basic streaming, Hulu TV, Roku, whatever. And he was like, yeah, it's right here on the ESPN app. So it says your game will start at 6:30. Well, we're sitting there at 6:30, 6:35, 6:40. And then 10 minutes later, it says this is not part of your TV package.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, I'm subscribing, trying to get a free trial of Sling TV. I end up getting the free trial, but it charged me an entry fee to get the sports package of like $20. Turns out Longhorn Network wasn't on Sling TV in my area.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, it was a whole deal, and most LSU fans, after they come home from a long day of work or whatever they do, just want to watch some baseball, and they might not even mind paying for it. I would have paid, I don't know, more than what it was worth last night. But anyway, all that to say, it was what you would call a pitcher's duel. Thatcher Hurd on the mound for the Tigers went 4 2/3, gave up 3 hits, had 4 strikeouts, 3 walks. Pretty good outing from him. Then Nate Ackenhausen came in, 8 up 3 1/3, and then you got a guy that maybe end up being your clear-cut closer. Eventually, we'll see. That's still kind of being ironed out. And Christian Little came in, closed out the 9th. I'd say overall there was a few instances where LSU was threatening, mainly the balk in the 7th inning when Texas's pitcher, I guess, tripped on the rubber or his cleat got stuck or whatever. LSU had runners at 2nd and 3rd and 2 outs, but didn't prevail there. And you get to the end of the game, top of the 9th, and who else but number 8 for the Tigers, probably the grittiest player on LSU, Gavin Dugas, a guy who has scratched and clawed and been such a contributor in his – I believe this is his 4th year with LSU. Number 8 knocks a 3-run home run out of the park to win the game. And to be honest with you, I was getting very tired. And honestly, I was getting a little bit bored. It was about 9:15, 9:20, and he he put some excitement into the night and got the job done.
Gavin Dugas, you mentioned that he's gritty. He reminds me, he's got a lot of Dustin Pedroia energy to him. And I guess maybe it's because they both play second base and they're both real scrappy hitters. But man, I mean, talk about when you needed it most, number 8 coming through. That was great to see. And great atmosphere in Austin from what it looked like. I mean, on the TV, I know that we had an out the box fan there, and Justin Landry. He was in attendance.
Yep.
So glad you could witness that.
Harrison Schluter and Jackson White.
Yeah, glad the boys could see a dub. But and Johnson mentioned this after the game. I mean, that's why you schedule something like this. You're trying to get that atmosphere, get in that situation against a quality baseball team as early as you can. Now, Texas has struggled record-wise out of the gate, but they are a good team. Their losses are just, teams like Vanderbilt. They've lost some pretty tight ball games against good opponents. And to be honest, John, I don't know how you felt. I thought they threw their best pitchers at us last night. I thought we were seeing the best of their staff. Obviously, LeBaron Johnson Jr. I mean, anytime you get a guy who's throwing mid-90s, okay, and he's going to break off a splitter at 89, 90 miles per hour, that's insanely difficult to hit. I'm going to pause here because I'm seeing some Tiger fans, not all, but some Tiger fans, they talk about, well, right now our offense is too boom or bust. So what they mean by that is you're either hitting a home run or you're striking out. I disagree with that. I disagree with that so heartily. Because here's the thing. So, John, I know you know this. I don't know, how many of the listeners know this. When I was at LSU, I was the coach of the club baseball team, which is just, a glorified intramural team. But one of the metrics that we use to grade our hitters was called the quality at bat, or QAB for short.
Like that.
Now, what all that means is that, a lot of people think, oh, well, to have a good at bat, you need to get on base. You need to get a walk or a hit, something like that. You got to get hit by a pitch. Not really. Okay. If you're striking out, but you saw 9 pitches, You've got a quality at bat. That's a good at bat. You can go to the dugout and say, hey, yeah, I struck out, but I was productive with my strikeout. If you hit a ball hard on the ground or on a line somewhere, it could just take 1 pitch. That's a good at bat. And I know that there are a lot of people who are not too familiar, or let's say they're casual with baseball. They're casual with their baseball fandom. They might see that and they might get frustrated. But I can assure you, this wasn't a situation where LSU hitters were going up and facing Johnson and striking out in 3 or 4 pitches. Okay, there was some of that, and there was always going to be some of that. But I think the big thing, the big takeaway here is, they ran this kid's pitch count up. They knocked him out. He threw 5 innings. Okay, after the 5th inning, he was done. Okay, so LSU saw their pitches. They were patient. Sometimes a pitcher's just good. So it really frustrates me whenever LSU's facing a good pitcher and we're striking out a lot and the fans say, well, we just can't hit this guy. Well, it's like, yeah, it's such a trite statement, but there's a reason it's trite, where they say, good pitching beats good hitting. It's a cliche because it's so often said, because it's true. Like, good pitching is going to beat good hitting. So certainly my takeaway from this game is not that, oh, gee, man, LSU, they really struggled at the plate. They're really boom or bust. No shot. No shot. I agree with that. I guarantee if you look back at the quality at bats, LSU had more quabs than Texas did. And I can assure you that, the team that has the most quality at bats, that team's going to score more runs 9 out of 10 times in the sport. That's just the way it is. Like you said, you mentioned LSU was threatening early. There was a situation with Trey Morgan at second base, early on. I think this was the 2nd inning, and Thompson hit a hard hit ball up the middle to the center fielder. I think that Morgan probably scores there. The announcers, the commentators mentioned something about him tripping and stumbling around when he was rounding third base. So he was actually thrown out by, a good step or two. But that's a situation where if he doesn't stumble there, LSU pushes a run across. Now all of a sudden you've got a 1-0 lead early on in the ball game. I mean, who knows what that does? Who knows how Texas reacts to that? So, just an unfortunate break. But this is not to say that LSU's offense was totally ill prepared to face Texas. When I hear that, I freak out. I don't know. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but
no, I do like what you're saying about the quality of bats. I mean, that applies to literally every sport. That applies to anything competitive. It's like in football. If you're wearing down an offensive line by the fourth quarter, you're going to have to come out. His pitch count, LBJ, as the commentators like to call him, like he was the president after Kennedy got shot. You know, he had 92 pitches in the fifth. That means something. I mean, you look at Skeens, just for reference. You look at Skeens, who threw 102 pitches, 101, 102 pitches in the Friday game, but he pitched a whole extra inning. So you want to keep your. I mean, shoot, I'm not doing the quick math right here, but I mean, I want to say the average number of pitches per inning for LBJ is 22. That's good. That is good. I mean,
you're having good at bats if that's the case.
And we had 9 strikeouts as well. But I mean, when you're battling and putting the ball in play and wearing the other team down and getting their guy out of the lineup, that's what you need to do. You have to. Sometimes you got to just chip away until you can take the knockout punch. But I do very much agree with that. I think
you could look at. I mean, a situation that just came to my mind. I think it was in the 4th inning. Tommy White, he has a really good at bat. He sees a lot of pitches. He ends up doubling down the left field line. Okay, that's a situation where you say to yourself, okay, we've got a leadoff double. This guy should score, and then you go strikeout, strikeout, strikeout. That's a situation where, okay, you can look at the offense in that particular inning and say, that wasn't up to par. Okay, that's got to be better. But that's one inning in a game where, for the most part, I thought, and it sounds like you agree, that the at-bats were good. We were just facing a really good pitcher. And sometimes, guys, that's going to happen. And the SEC is loaded. You're going to face guys who are going to strike you out a lot, But good teams find ways to win ball games, and that's what LSU did.
Yes. Another note, I think Nate Ackenhausen came in and pitched phenomenally.
He did.
With strikeouts, three and a third inning pitching, and he looked like he had control on the mound. Like we said, it was a pitcher's duel, and I think this LSU team, having him come out of the bullpen as well as the other stable of guys that we have in there, is going to be crucial leading into SEC play, and it's good. Like we were saying, and like kind of we've been saying for the whole episode, it's good that LSU is getting these reps against these quality teams so early on in the season, because generally, I mean, we've started out the year with Western Michigan, and this weekend we got Butler and Central Connecticut and things like that. But to mix in some quality opponents, honestly, this is something I just thought of too. It's like, we talked with Chris Reed and Beloso. This is something that I genuinely do think about all the time. I know I've kind of brought it up a lot lately, but the pitching, if you just look at the sheer speed of pitching when you go from Central Connecticut to Vanderbilt. Just say, I know we don't play Vanderbilt in the regular season this year, but that's got to be an adjustment, right? That's why LSU generally sometimes either struggles against slower pitching or faster pitching, because there's an adjustment that needs to be made. If you're used to a ball coming at 95, it's going to look like it's coming at 55 whenever you get a guy on the mound that can throw 82, 83. The point I'm trying to make is LSU's mixing in good pitchers, bad pitchers, good talent, bad talent. Like you said, Kansas State, they weren't really up to par, and then Iowa kicks the crap out of us the next day. So I'd rather take our, like Rory likes to say, take our lumps early on in the season, and that way we know exactly what we need to do going into SEC play.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. And you reminded me, because you mentioned Nate Ackenhausen, and he pitched very well. I thought he came in, did a phenomenal job. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do for us this year. But, he wears number 30. And I know that Luffy liked to call Trent Vittmeyer the Dirty 30.
Oh, wow, I didn't think of that.
But, hey, here's the thing, Nasty Nate. The Dirty 30, we got Nasty Nate. So, hey, talk to Luffy about it. See, just spitballing here, just thinking out loud. Could be something.
Nasty Nate. All right. Yeah. Maybe they need to. Maybe they could they could have like a passing on of the torch of the Dirty 30, and then it's like actually a thing, right? But then you also have to have a play on words on your actual name too. So
Yeah,
I like
it
that.
could get complicated. It could
Yeah.
get complicated. And two, also before we move on, I don't want to just gloss over this fact. Thatcher Hurd, I mean, he came in. There were a lot of questions about after his start against Southern. And I thought, he struggled a little in the first inning. He gave up a leadoff walk. I think he gave up another walk. He gave up three total walks. Two of them came in the first inning. I thought he did a really good job of settling in and just doing what needed to be done, throwing up zeros on the scoreboard. Obviously, I think we can all look and say he's not where he exactly needs to be right now. And I think he would even tell you he's not where he needs to be. There's still some situations where, on an 0-2 count, he throws a pitch and it's falling away arm side and, it's way out of the zone. Now, it's one thing to throw a ball on an 0-2 count. Most people would tell you should throw a ball on an 0-2 count. It's another thing to throw a non-competitive pitch on an 0-2 count. So that was something that, I'd like to see him improve upon a little bit moving forward. But I think he's absolutely going to be a weekend rotation guy. And then one more thing, Ben Naiple, got to get the bunt down. Got to get the bunt down, man. I mean, a lot of people are going to forget he didn't put a ball on the carpet because Gavin Dugas came in and played hero, and everybody forgets the at-bat before. Ben Naiple had a situation with runners on first and second base and was given bunt, and he could not get it down. He almost popped out on a bunt. That can't happen. That is a losing baseball play. When you're in a tight game against good teams, that's the kind of thing that will cost you games. So that's got to be something that's improved upon. Look, Naipol's good. I'm not trying to dog the kid, but just in general, that's something that we've seen bite LSU in postseason play before. That's got to get cleaned up now, sooner rather than later.
I think that's a good point. I think that will be fixed. I think Jay Johnson probably almost had an aneurysm when that play occurred. I think every person who was watching the game was definitely holding their breath. Luckily, the third baseman charged it a little too hard. So yes. Do I think that'll be improved upon? Yes. But I do think that's a good point, especially in a tight game. All right. LSU baseball is the number one team in the nation. You know who the number one realtor is in the nation? Blaine Lube with Keller Williams Realty. Blaine wants you to know that Keller Williams is an equal opportunity housing partner. Each office is independently owned and operated. Make sure to call or text Blaine Lube at 504-858-0031 for all your housing needs. Blaine is my realtor. Blaine has literally helped me purchase property in the past. Blaine took care of everything for me, and he was making deals from Egypt on his honeymoon. He wants to help you out. He's constantly thinking about work. He loves helping people. He loves getting people the best deal and negotiating and finding them a place to rent if they need one, finding people to rent out their investment property, buying or selling a home, you name it. Make sure to call or text Blaine Loop at 504-858-0031 for all your housing needs. Chris, I'm sure you can attest, Blaine Loop is a phenomenal guy. And if you were to buy a piece of property soon, you would give Blaine a call.
Blaine is a good man. Blaine is a good man. Known him for a while now, so I can attest he's as enthusiastic as it gets.
Yes. Call or text Blaine Loop, 504-858-0031 for all your housing needs. All right, a few takeaways. LSU baseball is 7-1 on the season. I'm just going to go down my list of things that I wanted to cover on this podcast. We're waiting on Tommy White to catch fire. I thought maybe for a second that he was going to just for whatever reason, I just felt like he was going to put one out last night in a close game. Didn't quite happen that way. I don't know if it's still kind of the nagging injury. I don't know if he's used to being in the field, not DHing and whatnot, but I am waiting on Tommy White to catch fire.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, it's a shame because, he singled in his first at bat, then jams his shoulder into first base on the dive back. I do think that's probably playing a big issue, or not. I think it's playing a bigger issue than anyone wants to admit right now. I think when he gets back to full health and gets back, like you said, because there is a thing where you go from the rhythm of playing in a game where you're fielding and hitting to just sitting on the bench fermenting, and then, hey, it's your turn to bat. There's definitely something to that. So I think both are probably part of the problem here.
Yeah. Yep. So the second thing on my list was to complain about D1 baseball and Longhorn Network. I think we did plenty of that. Shout out Kids-Genomics. If you don't know, then you need to know. If you do know, you know. And Gavin Dugas has earned it. I think for him to be wearing number 8 and to make the plays that he does, a 3-run bomb on the road, tough opponent early in the season, midweek game, you name it, he's earned it. He needs to be in this lineup every day, a leader on this team. And I don't think this. I hate to say that this team doesn't have success without him, because we're still a very good team. But I think he is going to play such a crucial part in this team making its way through the season and into SEC play.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's interesting because I agree with everything you said. And it's interesting to talk about this now in light of what was being said about the second base position in the preseason, where Johnson was basically saying, like, there's no starter at second base. It's going to be a revolving door. You're going to see a lot of faces there. But then Gavin Dugas comes in, doesn't start opening day. He's not in the starting lineup opening day. Gavin Dugas comes in and he's literally writing his name in the lineup himself. I mean, it's going to be – you can't justify taking this guy out. Like you said, not only is he a team leader, he's number 8, but he's showing you on the field. He had an incredible play at second, where he's going towards the bag, throwing across his body to throw the runner out. And then obviously we talked about the home run. He's proving that he belongs there. And we're going to see, that's another name that I think you can scribble in as an everyday starter the same way you can scribble in Dylan Cruz's name,
Yes. All right. LSU 7-1. We're heading into this weekend. You told me before we started recording that you've done extensive research on Butler and Central Connecticut's starting 9 and their bullpen. What do you? That was a joke. I don't want to paint you. I don't want to paint you in a corner, but I guess more of the question is going forward. LSU into a 4-day series weekend. We're gearing up for the start of SEC play. What do you expect for this weekend, and what does LSU need to accomplish as we move through the season?
So I did do a little bit of research. So you weren't completely BSing on that, but so looking at Butler's going to be the team that we play Friday. Now, what's interesting is so Butler and Central Connecticut State are coming in to Baton Rouge, and it's kind of like a little round robin tournament in a sense, because everybody's going to be playing each other, and it's going to be a 4-game stretch like you mentioned. So LSU's going to be playing games on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Okay, so Butler's actually going to play Central Connecticut State first on Friday. That's going to be around 1 o'clock, and then they'll play us at 6:30 that same night. Butler is 2-6 on the year. They're 250th in the RPI right now. RPI is really not good for anything in the month of February and March, but just thought I'd throw it out there to give some background on this team. They split 2 games against Farley Dickinson University. Okay, whoever that is, they were swept. Butler got swept by Campbell, and they did lose a midweek game to Indiana. So, Campbell's a good team. People remember Campbell for their regional run a couple years ago. Indiana is a Power 5 team. So they've played some good teams, but I'm not expecting LSU to struggle too much with either of these opponents. Central Connecticut State has actually not played a game at all this year. They were supposed to play Massachusetts, but that got postponed. So this is going to be Central Connecticut State's first action of baseball this year. A tall task, if you're asking me, and I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible. It's going to be a tall task for this team to go from playing 0 baseball to playing the number 1 team in the country. I would look for LSU LSU should sweep this weekend. LSU should win every game Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Now, we are talking about baseball. Balls bounce funny ways. So, if we drop a game to one of these teams, the sky is not falling. But LSU is good enough to where, back home at Alex Box, no longer living out of a suitcase. I think LSU's got a very good chance to go undefeated this weekend before SEC play gets started.
You heard it first here, and I actually had a note to look up the weather while you were giving a preview. of this coming weekend. I think the weather's supposed to be pretty good. It's hot. It's really hot right now for this time of year, given that it was freezing on opening day at the box. I'm sure there'll be some spotty showers throughout the weekend, but overall, one thing's pretty sure of, and like I said, I'm not a weatherman, but I do enjoy looking at it. It's gonna be hot.
Well, it's important for baseball too. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because I do tend to get a little overzealous. I look at teams like they're in a vacuum sometimes. I completely forget about the weather. I mean, you look at the Kansas State game that we were talking about. One thing I probably forgot to mention there was that it was a really windy day. Like the wind was doing funny things early on in that Kansas State game. It was cold, so all that plays a factor. So, weather is actually a really important aspect in all sports, but I think especially baseball. So I'm glad you did bring that up. So like in a vacuum, yes, LSU should sweep the series. And like you said, I think that the weather is going to be good enough, even though it's hot, for LSU to not have any weather issues or excuses there. But it is important to mention.
It is going to actually be a nice weekend at the box, Chris. Friday, clearing skies, high of 75, low of 49, 0% chance of rain all weekend until you get to Monday. 20% chance of rain, mostly cloudy in the evening around first pitch. By Monday, you're going to have a high of 84 and a low of 69. So it might be a little bit chilly on Friday night. Saturday is going to be perfect baseball weather. Sunday is as well, mostly sunny. Monday going to be a little partly cloudy, might have a spotty shower here and there. But, Chris, back to you. No. All right. So
you'd be great at WAFB, man. If this podcast thing doesn't work out, you need to send this tape in.
I want to be the weatherman one day, just one day. Maybe we can work something out with Steve Caparata or Jay Grimes. But all right, next we're gonna do a quick. Chris, I told you we weren't gonna go that long. We're already at 52 minutes,
well, John, we just have such good chemistry with each other, man. I mean, this is like we're just chatting.
That's right. All right. So before we get to a little quick LSU football coaching mini segment, I want to shout out the House Bar in Tigerland. Jeff and Casey over there are ready for the springtime. It's March. You know what that means? St. Patrick's Day, crawfish, LSU baseball. So much good stuff to go do over at the House Bar in Tigerland. Best beer, best pizza, best crawfish in Tigerland. Get on over to the House Bar in Tigerland. Follow them on Twitter at Tigerland House and on Facebook and Instagram at House of Tigerland. Also at thehouseintigerland.com. You can see, if you're watching us on YouTube, my House Bar hat is hanging in the studio whenever I do not wear it. I'm wearing an LSU hat today because it's an LSU podcast. And I love LSU and I love the house. So get on over to the House Bar in Tigerland. Tell them the Out the Box podcast sent you. All right. We're not going to do a House Always Wins segment this week. Taking a little hiatus from
we gave it up for Lent.
Wow, that would have been a great idea. I didn't do that. But I think what we're going to do for a little while until we get back into the gambling swing of things is we'll do a little mini other sports in LSU, like a little mini other LSU sports segment, because this is baseball season. It's primarily going to be about baseball. LSU football in the news this week. Brian Kelly is filling out his coaching staff. Last week, we forgot to mention that Brian Polian is being relieved of his on-the-field duties and will be moved to an off-the-field, almost like analyst role. I think that's the right move. Our special teams was atrocious last year, Chris. I'm sure you're gonna tee off on that. But I do want to, I guess, bring up and see what we know about our new special teams coordinator and outside linebackers coach, John Jancic, and Bob Diaco. Been hearing Bob Diaco's name for a little while now. He's being brought on as an analyst as well on Brian Kelly's staff.
Yeah, so, to your point about special teams, in no way, and I know this is the horse has been beaten. I mean, it's dead, it's beaten, it's rotten. But just to get my lick in on Brian Polian, he's a great guy. From what I can tell from the interviews, he loves Baton Rouge. He's a good recruiter. He's an asset to the team. He should be nowhere near the special teams. Special teams shouldn't cost you games. it's one thing for special teams to be average. It's another thing for special teams to cost you football games. And you could argue that we had a special teams bugaboo from the beginning of the season with the Florida State fiasco all the way through the Tennessee game where you're muffing the opening kickoff. So, it sounds like Kelly's going to elevate and then also bring in Bob Diaco to be, an analyst. I was kind of hearing conflicting reports. I'm not really sure who's going to be in charge of what. Somebody was saying that, one's just going to handle linebackers and the other one's going to focus on special teams. And somebody else was saying, no, they're both going to kind of collaborate on special teams. I don't really know. I think the biggest takeaway from this for fans should be that Kelly is basically saying a guy who's never coached special teams before is an upgrade from what we have. So it's almost like addition by subtraction here. You're subtracting Brian Polian from the equation, and you're gaining something from it. So Brian Polian, great man. He's going to be in a GM capacity, but his love of Ammart sandwiches, of the Ammart turkey sandwiches, should not give him a pass for how atrocious the special teams performance was this year.
Hey, and that's saying a lot because the Cajun turkey is that's my move every time.
It hits, it slaps, it does. He's got good taste, but that does not preclude him from a mea culpa on the special teams.
I think that's a fair assessment. Chris, any other miscellaneous topics you want to get to? Obviously, the women's team is rolling. Yeah. The men's team stinks. LSU softball is doing all right. I think LSU beach volleyball starts on Saturday. I wouldn't otherwise know that other than a guy at work told me he was going today. Any other missed topics?
No, man, I don't think so. I think it's a good time to be an LSU fan, partially because we're picking up in good sports. So women's basketball is about to enter tournament play. Softball's doing okay. The baseball team's doing well, and you're dropping arguably the weakest sport in the whole Rolodex in men's basketball. They will not be competing in postseason play. So. I just think that's again addition by subtraction. I'm tired of having that men's basketball team in the peripheral of conversation. And also one other thing to bring up, Pete Maravich's record's about to be broken. I don't know if y'all been keeping up with that. This guy named Antoine Davis of Detroit Mercy University, he's 24 points away from breaking Pete's record. So they play Thursday night in a tournament. Now, if they lose, that's it. They don't have a good enough record to continue on. So basically, if they win Thursday, he's probably going to break the record if he doesn't break it in that game. If they lose and he scores less than 24 points, he won't break the record. But just, an interesting tidbit. He's a fifth year. Pete broke the record in 3, obviously, like we all know. Pete did it without a shot clock and without the three-point line. Unfortunately, nuance is not really remembered in history. They'll just remember the guy whose name is next to the record. So, unfortunate, but good for the kid, I guess.
That is a very good point. I remember about a year or two ago, I was listening to a podcast and they were like, yeah, Pistol Pete, his record, it'll never even come close to being broken or something.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those records where, like you said, people considered it in unbreakable territory. Now, I think what's unique about this is he's a fifth year. COVID granted this kid a fifth year. So I think that if the record somehow survives this go round, God forbid we have another pandemic and everybody gets another year. But I think that it will survive then for the long run. But just the fact that this kid, because the kid's only averaging about 25 points a game in his career. I think Pete averaged something like 44 points per game, which is an absurd stat. I mean, if you consider this, if you're a basketball coach and that there's a guy on your team that is going to roll out and score 44 points. That's a really nice thing to have. It's almost mythical, to even talk like that. But yeah, this guy's going to do it in 5 years, and Pete did it in 3 because the NCAA did not allow freshmen to play back then. So, unfortunate. But I think that I don't think the 44 points a game record is going to be broken. I'm pretty sure that's an unbreakable territory.
Yes. Well. I do like when records get broken, but I'm kind of hoping this one stays. So tune in Thursday night and check that out. Thank you guys so much for listening. We cannot thank y'all enough. Chris, thank you so much for joining the Out of the Box podcast tonight. We absolutely rolled this episode. I like I was telling you before, I said, yeah, I mean, it's getting kind of late at night. We got to get our beauty sleep and whatnot, but we ended up going pretty long, and it was great. Shout out to the House Bar in Tigerland, Wordbox LLC, Blaine Loop, Keller Williams Realty, and DraftKings, as well as the Boot Crew Media Network. Chris, you're a great co-host and friend. Thank you so much for joining us on the Out the Box podcast tonight.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. I always enjoy it, John. Always enjoy it.
Hey, I want to get you on record. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but you did say before the episode that we were going to start seeing some baseball articles.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I did. So I did. To his credit, he's telling the truth here. I did say we're going to start seeing some baseball articles when SEC play starts. Okay. I'm not writing about Sam Houston State and Kansas State, guys. That's just not going to happen. I don't have the time for that. Texas A&M, on the other hand, I will have the time for that. So
fair enough. Thank you, Chris.
All right, John.